You have to sort of be the advocate for your dog, for your training, and for your relationship. So having an understanding of what your dog's bucket looks like, how big is it, what the drainage holes are like, and then things that pay into the bucket. Remember, it's not just negative, it's positive things too, positive, exciting things. And then you can better say, wow, this thing happened. I know why. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dog Sense. I'm your host, Kathy, and I'm here with my co-host, Sarah.
Hey, guys.
So this is an episode driven by a story that a student had in class, and then I went off on a rampage just sort of talking about it, and I'm like, this is a podcast episode. Like, I wish we were recording right in that classroom. So here it is. I'll set the stage for you. My student has a lovely dog, and I'm not naming her or her dog, although she would be okay with it. Yeah. And they had quite a day. I think it was on Thursday. And he woke up and it was a normal morning. And then they went out for an outdoor adventure. Lots of sniffing, lots of running and playing. It was a good morning. And then when they went home, there was a little bit of tumultuous challenges occurring in their home. And so they weathered it for a bit and then decided to go to a friend's house. Now, the friend happens to have two dogs who he is friendly with. And there was shenanigans and playing and hanging out and things like that. By the end of the day, he got a paper towel. And no big deal. She asked for the paper towel back and he took off running. Again, no big deal. He's off leash trained. She called him and he said, I don't think so. So she did what she should have. She walked over to him with her hand out, just as she always would, reached for the paper towel, and guess what he did? He tried to bite her. Now, we call that resource guarding. And she was very, very understandably upset. And we talked to her about why that happened. And it's interesting because, as most owners do, she thought it was because he wanted to possess the paper towel. But we know that it was the day that resulted in what he did. And so that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about how your dog goes from waking up their usual self to a dog who bites you over something really, really silly. So Sarah, let's get into it. So we're going to talk about hindbrain, front brain, but to make it easier for everyone to understand, we're going to talk about your dog when he's super cranked, when he's in a high state of arousal. And let's give them an analogy of a bucket. Like, how does a bucket play into all this?
Yeah. So, and also to keep in mind, this was the guarding of the biting her over the paper towel was really out of character for this dog, right? If you have a dog who resource guards, then this is not that necessarily that conversation. This is for like when something really out of character happens for your dog, you need to look at the rest of the dog's day and your dog's bucket, right? So think about literally, I'm picturing a big orange Home Depot bucket. That's just what pops into my head as my dog's bucket, right? So throughout the day, a ton of different things can fill up your bucket, but can also drain your bucket. So when we go into, so Kathy, talk about, so a few different things, what can fill your dog's bucket?
Okay. Well, let's start out with my dog, Ray. And Ray, she's she's an amazing dog. She's so bright and cheery. She's a big bucket. And a lot of stuff has to happen before it reaches capacity. In addition, and it's also important, the size of the drainage holes in her bucket, they're huge. So something bad can happen and drains right out the bottom. But if you have a dog with a small bucket and very teeny weeny draining holes, they may need more time to recover from an event. Yep. So things that play into the buckets, they're exciting things, they're scary things, they're frustrating things. So all of those things, whether it's negative or positive, it goes in the bucket. So let's say I picked up her leash. Let's throw 3 cups of water in that bucket because she was excited to see the leash. And I put the leash on her and we went outside. 3 more buckets because now we're outside. Then we're on a walk and she sees a wild turkey and she's like, I want that. But I don't let her get it. There's a little frustration. That goes in the bucket. So this goes on and off all day long. And as trainers, we're aware of it. But as non-trainers, you might not be aware of it. And then pretty soon, her bucket is full and it's draining as well. It's draining throughout the day. But let's say she gets a full bucket. And then let's say something odd happens. So she sees the trash can on its side when we go back into the house. It's in the driveway and it's tipped over. And actually this did happen, Sarah. She was like, ah! And she reacted and she backed up. I actually have video of it. And she's like, oh my gosh, now this dog never in her life has been spooked by a trash can. They've been on their side many times and she's almost 2. So it's not like she's never seen this. But what happened was something that she would normally been about, her bucket was full. And even though that might have been a tablespoon, it was a tablespoon too much and she reacted. So it's a combination of size of the bucket, the drainage holes, and how your day is going.
All right. So I think one of the biggest questions that people then are going to have is, okay, so my dog's bucket's getting really full. And again, this is super individualized to your dog, right? Think about what fills your dog's bucket and then think about how you can drain it. So what are some good examples of how people can help their dog drain their bucket throughout the day so that we don't get too high and we don't overflow?
Right. And we talk about hindbrain, front brain a lot. And so we do something called crazy sits. So we get them excited and we get them to sit, right? And we tell you that's a secret to our dog training, because if your dog can't respond to a command when they're in a state of high arousal, all the training you're doing isn't really going to work, because it's really great when you're in the kitchen holding a cheese stick facing north. But when you ask your dog to do something when they're excited and somebody comes in the house or they see a squirrel, they don't do it. And you're like, dog training doesn't work, but it's not true. It's just that they don't know how to go from high arousal to calm. But there's also bits in the middle. So here's a good example. And it's an extreme example. When I was competing with my Golden decades ago in Florida, we were at a show and she walked by a dog in a crate and it reacted at her. It hit the door of its crate and it moved the whole crate like 3 feet forward. She jumped a mile and she was like, oh my gosh. Now, side note, if it were Ray, she'd be like, hey, you need some professional help and keep going. but that was not Opal. Opal was like, oh my God. And I knew at that moment that working her around this crate, that feeding her, that having her have a good response, none of that was going to help. What she needed to do was go in the car with me. I put the AC on. I gave her a chewy. I let her kind of come down from it, because there was no way in that moment I could have worked her through it. Then after like an hour, maybe 2, we went back in the building. I tested out. She was cool. I actually took her in a different door, because you don't always have to work on that thing, right? Like if I took her in that door again, she might have PTSD. Took her in a different door, warmed her up, got her playing, and then she was fine. So sometimes moving out of a situation and giving them time to reset, which for her was a couple hours, could be a couple days if it was really a bad situation.
So for Opal, how you drained her bucket was she needed to go chill in the car. She needed to chew on something. That was how she was able to drain her bucket. And knowing your individual dog and how they can calm down and take it down a few notches is really important, because what drained Opal's bucket is not going to drain one of my Nev's bucket, right? That going to hang out in the car and relax wouldn't drain her bucket. For her, she needs to get some energy out. So I'd go outside and I'd probably play tug with her, right? I would kind of try to drain the energy that way for her in a physical manner. So for her, what helps her come down is physical exercise. So that's how she would drain her bucket.
And that's from an extreme, right? And I didn't mention that Opal was in my lap and I was holding her while she was chewing her phone. Just the kind of dog she was. But then, Sarah, we have increments, and we talk a little bit about this, that if you have a dog who is hindbrain or front brain, 0 to 100, that's a hard dog to live with. And sometimes we want a dog with a little bit of drive, reactivity. You know what? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how.
I was going to say, you have to give your kind of explanation of how we look at the word reactive.
Yeah. So in dog trainer terms, when we say the dog is reactive, most times we dog trainers mean it negatively, like that dog is reactive at people or reactive at dogs. But as I'm back more in my competition obedience mode with this dog, Ray, I was thinking the other day, reactive isn't bad. Like when I say down and she's reactive to me / responsive and she hits the deck in a down, or she's racing away on a go out and I say sit and she whips around and sits, reactive is good. So you want a reactive responsive dog. The key though is keeping it in a zone where you still get the response you want, where she can still perform the things that you've taught her to. So if I get Ray really excited, I get brilliant sits and just great recall. Like everything is great. If I get her too excited, she gets a little sloppy. Like if I say down, maybe she'll throw a sit at me. If I get her more excited, like with tug and like, wow, yay, she might not do anything at all. Maybe she'll bark at me, or her patented go-to, which is back up. Like,
yeah.
She's like, how'd you like this? Back it up. I'm like, no, stop backing up. So we want to make sure that we can control the level of arousal that they have into a manageable bit for that particular dog. And it's unique with each one. So, and then again, Sarah, the other conversation is what I want in a reactivity responsive arousal level might be different than what other people want or what other people's dogs are capable of. So that all plays into it. I want you to understand that a dog doesn't have to be wild or calm. There's a piece in the middle, and that's what you work to. And that's what our games like Zen and blocking and it's your choice and hand targets, those games sort of foster the dog coming down a bit and still being responsive to you.
Yeah. And I think that that's what probably most people need the most help with is, okay, so I'm picturing that bucket with a lot of water in it and it's sloshing around. So like we're right at the edge, right? So there's some's coming out. We're right at that edge where we need that. That's where impulse control comes in. That's where games like crazy sits, adding obedience into your play, practicing going from hind brain to front brain where they can actually focus and listen. So what would kind of be your best suggestions for how people can start to practice that? So when they know their bucket's sloshing, the water's coming out, how can people practice being able to bring their dog, help drain the bucket in those situations?
So let's say it's a dog who's coming to dog class, and we see this all the time. So the dog is super excited about getting in the car. So that's going to pay into that bucket, or be super stressed or concerned about going into the car, or he's not super, but he is stressed. It's paying into the bucket. So number one, I want people to have an awareness of how big your dog's bucket is. Now we're going to increase the size of the bucket and the draining holes with confidence. But in the meantime, you got to know what you're playing with. So if I had a dog who was putting a lot in their bucket because of the drive, I would not take them out of the car and prance them into class. I would take them out of the car. I might do a little potty walk. I might do ready, catch, maybe spin. If the dog was stressed, maybe I would do some be still, where we rub the dogs to get them to come into more of a Zen experience. Then when I had that, I'd walk to the classroom door. And if that point I saw accumulation again, maybe I could go in depending on my dog. Maybe not. Maybe I'd have to do some Zen again, or maybe if they were too cranked, maybe I'd have to heal them. This reminds me of a dog I was competing with in Florida. My most brilliant dog, Trigger. I would have to heal this dog for 40 minutes outside in Florida to get her to come down because she was so high. Her arousal level was so off the chart that she would basically be bouncing up here in heel position. And it became like, everybody knew it. They're like, where's Kathy? She's in the ring in 10 minutes. Yeah, no, she's probably in the parking lot healing for another half hour. The dog just needed her bucket emptied. It was exhausting, but she was brilliant. So that's what I would have to do. So then you go into the classroom. That's more water in your bucket, either a good thing or a bad thing, but it still adds to it, right? So your dog is in classroom. They're like, dogs, people, maybe Sarah or Kathy. Or they're like, holy crap. This is really scary.
Yep, exactly. It could be either one. You have to know your dog.
And then they have to do different things in classroom, right? So it's either you are getting rid of some of that drive. Maybe you're healing, you're doing a food follow, maybe you're doing tug, or maybe you're building confidence. You move a little away from the situation. And maybe, Sarah, maybe the dogs that accumulate a lot of stress in class need to go to the water fountain and then come back, right? During class. Do you have kids in school who did that?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, exactly.
They need a mental break from the stim.
Exactly. Yeah, they would go for a bathroom break. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes during class, your dog might genuinely need that as well, and never feel like weird or awkward about telling your trainer, hey, listen, he's way over aroused, like he's way too excited, or maybe he's way too nervous. Can we go for a quick potty break? Your trainer's going to say, yes, absolutely. Go do whatever you need to do. You know your dog best. If that's what your dog needs, he needs to go outside, take a break from the environment, go potty, go sniff. That could be how he drains his bucket. Or maybe you go outside and you tug with him. Maybe you go outside, you just sit in the car and you give him a chewy for 10 minutes, like Opal, whatever it is, but know how to drain your dog's bucket and try different things too.
And I'm totally cool with people coming to class early. Yeah, they hang out with the class before them. I'm totally cool with them coming in late. I'm totally cool with them going in and out as many times as they need or leaving early, because really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the maximum benefit to your dog. And if the bucket is full and it's not draining, then that's your priority, not the thing I'm teaching, which of course I will let you know what we taught if you miss anything, but you have to sort of be the advocate for your dog, for your training, and for your relationship. So having an understanding of what your dog's bucket looks like, how big is it, what the drainage holes are like, and then things that pay into the bucket. Remember, it's not just negative, it's positive things too, positive, exciting things. And then you can better say, wow, this thing happened. I know why. You can sort of look back on the day versus being totally upset and freaked out that you now have a Frankenstein monster of a dog, when really the day was just a lot for him with very little drainage.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So I think that covers everything in terms of what we wanted to go over with the bucket. So guys, as always, if you like what you hear, jump over to whichever subscription service you download from and like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend, share this episode. Maybe last time you were in puppy class, you saw another dog who was struggling and it was one of your neighbors. Share this episode with them because it can be really helpful to help kind of manage your dog. And when you are going into those new situations, to think of it like the bucket. It's a great visual. All right. So share this episode, help spread the word so we can continue to create an awesome community of dog lovers and learners. All right, guys, happy training, everyone.
Have fun.